Good evening, everybody. This is Dr. Fear. Before I start tonight's video, I do want to issue an apology for the long hiatus between my last video and this one. Due to some personal and technical issues, I did have to take a little leave of absence so that I could get everything in order. Now that I do have everything in order, I do plan to post on a more regular schedule. Now, without further ado, dim those lights, and let's begin the story. When I was about 16 or 17 years old, I was walking home from a party being held at my friend's house. The streets were dark and eerily empty as I strode down the street towards my home. The beeping of the watch I wore then notified me of the passing of the hour, and I glanced at it to confirm the time, 3 a.m. I didn't normally go to parties or come home so late. In fact, I can count the times I came home after midnight in high school with one hand. I was a good kid, and my parents knew my friends well. All I had to do was let them know who I would be with, what time I would be back, and give them a call before I left my friend's house, and I pretty much had no curfew. As I wasn't really accustomed to coming home so late, I wasn't used to the empty streets. They were normally bustling with people playing and living their lives. The emptiness gave the walk a creepy vibe. I was about 2 blocks short from the bridge that led to my house when I saw a hooded figure step off of the bridge, headed in my direction. One thing you should know about that bridge is that it was a hotspot for mugging and other violent crimes. I was always told never to walk that bridge at night and to go around the long way. I did mention I was a teenager at the time, however, so of course I didn't listen. Seeing the hooded figure, however, made me wish that I had, as even from afar he gave off a threatening vibe. I ultimately decided that I was a tough guy, and if the dude started with me, I'd finish it. I continued towards him. Big mistake. As I drew closer, the strangest thing I had ever witnessed happened. From either behind or out of that hooded figure, another hooded figure came forth and fell in line with the first. Then out of the second, a third emerged, and from the third, a fourth. I couldn't believe what I had witnessed. It was almost as if the first guy had multiplied into 4 people. Either that, or they were walking in such perfect sync that you could not see one behind the other. There were 4 hooded figures, all dressed the same height and weight, walking towards me in perfect cadence. I have seen my share of creepy stuff before that day, but nothing like that. Every instinct in my body was shouting for me to flee, and I decided at that moment that I wasn't as tough as I thought. I began to cross the street to take the long way around, and they also began to cross. It was clear that they were matching my movement. I picked up my pace and got to the corner before they did, almost at a jog. At one point, I was close enough to get a look at them, but all 4 of their faces were obscured by their hoods. I couldn't even see their chins or noses. It was just darkness, almost as if they had no face. I was just about to start sprinting in abject terror when suddenly I found my backbone and I decided I would not run from whatever they were. I took a deep breath, and summoning all my courage, I turned around to face them. They were gone. I looked around for them, but they were nowhere in sight. They had completely disappeared. There was no place they really could have gone, however. They weren't close enough to any buildings to have gotten into them. In fact, they were right behind me. I didn't spend too long searching for the creepy hooded figures, and 10 minutes later I was home. As soon as I entered my house, my mother came out of her bedroom and approached me and asked, "Mijo, are you okay?" I found her concern odd, and thought maybe she didn't remember me calling her before leaving my friend's house. I'm fine, Mom. We spoke an hour ago. I told you I'd be home at this time. You did, she confirmed. But after I spoke with you, I fell asleep. Then suddenly I was awoken by an angel that told me, "Your son is in danger. Come with me." My mother was, and still is, a Christian, as am I. So hearing her speak about angels wasn't uncommon. But her saying she went somewhere with one wasn't your average dinner conversation at my house. The angel led my spirit to a room where there were a bunch of other teenagers that were chanting around the table, and they had a picture of you on the table. And their words sounded foreign. It feels like they were trying to send something after you, my mom explained. I swallowed hard. What happened next? I asked her hesitantly. The angel prompted me to step forward onto their table, so I did. And suddenly I was wearing this beautiful white gown, and the kids that were chanting could see me, and they all fled in terror. I think I disrupted whatever they were trying to do. Mom, when did this happen? I asked, although I already knew. Just now, like maybe 10 or 15 minutes ago, she responded. I couldn't believe it. That was about the same time those guys appeared. Was there any connection between my mom's vision and the four hooded figures? I don't know, but all I do know is that I don't ever want to meet those hooded guys again. So this story is going to be partly from my perspective, and partly from my brother's, and it's going to be a long one. This is a true story. This happened last night while I was at my grandmother's house. So before this all took place, I went to McDonald's in the nearest city to us, which is about 20 minutes away. After that, I decided to go to my grandmother's house instead of going straight home. For context, she lives down a long farm road to which you have to turn off down a half-mile of dirt road driveway just to get to her house. I arrived there around 9 p.m., and I went in and visited with my grandmother and my brother, who has been living with her ever since my grandpa passed away so that she wouldn't have to live there all alone. My brother and I took out my grandma's dog to go pee around 10:30 p.m., and we just sat outside listening to music and talking for a while. At that point, I was starting to get cold because this is East Texas, and I am not yet used to it getting down to the low 40s at night, so I was ready to head inside. I noticed something moving in the corner of my eye near the large metal shop that sits a few hundred yards from the house. I didn't really take too much notice though, because it's not uncommon for deer or raccoons to come snooping around in the yard. And plus my grandma's dog wasn't barking, so I thought it might have just been my eyes playing tricks on me. We finally headed back inside, and my grandmother went to sleep at about 11 p.m. So my brother and I stayed up, and we watched YouTube for a while. At around 2:30 a.m., I was very tired and ready to go home. So I asked my brother to walk with me to the door and make sure that I got to my car, because I am always very paranoid, especially at night. He joked around and said that he would turn the light off on me and lock the door, and I freaked out and begged him to walk me out to the car, to which he finally humored me. I got in my car and immediately locked the doors and saw the porch lights turn off as I was driving back down the dirt road. I got home within 10 minutes and fixed myself some ice cream before I sat down and enjoyed some creepy horror stories on YouTube. Another 15 or so minutes passed, and I got a FaceTime call from my brother, to which I picked up almost immediately. I could tell he was freaked out about something, and he wasn't saying anything right away, so I asked him what was wrong. The following is my best attempt to paraphrase what my brother told me. He said that after I left, he went back outside to listen to some music and sit on the porch. He had the music on his phone up pretty loud, which would usually mask any noises of animals coming from the nearby woods. After a few minutes of listening to music, he said that he heard what he thought to be the sounds of metal banging around, so he quickly paused the music and listened to see if he could hear the sound again. He stood up and looked towards the shop and the boat shed, which were adjacent to each other and a few hundred yards apart from where he was standing. He saw a faint light shining near the boat shed, but then it quickly flicked off. At this point, he was freaking out, so he quietly crept back inside the house and locked the door behind him. He said that he ran to his room at the back of the house, I guess not thinking to wake our grandma, and grabbed his revolver. He quickly ran back outside and saw the glow of the flashlight move around again and then quickly shut off as soon as he noticed it. He walked around to the edge of the concrete carport and stared out towards the boat shed with his revolver at his side. The only thing illuminating the boat shed was the faint light coming from the house. He said that he tried to muster up the most intimidating voice he could manage and said, "Who the hell is out there?" To which there was no immediate reply, except for a slight bumping sound, which solidified the fact that someone was, indeed, there. Now keep in mind, this is out in the middle of the country, in a town, with a population of just over 1,000 people, and the nearest house is across the lake or miles down the farm road, so no well-meaning person would have just stumbled across my grandma's house this late at night. Also, my grandma has had problems with people snooping around the property in the past, so this is not something any of us would take lightly. And for the life of me, I can't tell you why my brother didn't just call the police. But you also have to remember that there is literally one cop in our entire town, and it was 3 a.m., so it would take at least 30 minutes for the cops to even show up. So anyway, my brother again called for the person to show themselves and repeated his question, and asked the person to identify themselves. He said that he practically shit his pants as a tall, lanky figure slowly emerged from the boat shed with a flashlight in hand. Although my brother couldn't see any distinct features about the person, he could definitely tell that it was an older man, and that it was nobody that we knew. It was especially not anyone that should be near our boat shed at 3 a.m. At this point, he raised the revolver up to point at the man and again shouted, "Who the fuck are you?" The man was still silent and slowly began walking towards him. My brother pulled back the hammer of the revolver and gave one last verbal warning to the man and said, "I swear I will blow your fucking head off. Now, who are you and why are you here?" The man quickly raised his hands up and said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, calm down, man," in a taunting voice as he continued walking towards my brother. My brother fired a single shot just above the man's head, to which he finally took his cue that my brother meant business. The man hurriedly took off on foot back down the driveway, and my brother screamed, "Next time I won't miss!" My brother then quickly ran inside to wake up my grandma, who had somehow slept through the entire commotion. She didn't seem worried enough to actually call the police. But of course, after hearing this, all I could think about was, what were the true intentions of that man? Was he just some meth head snooping around looking to steal some tools for drug money? Or were his intentions much more sinister? Another question that haunts me about this whole situation is, how many times has this happened after my grandma and brother went to bed and we just didn't know? And was he watching us from the shadows all night? Was he watching me as I walked out to my car? What would have happened if my brother had actually turned out the lights and locked the door before I could get to my car. So, to the stranger who tried to rob us, or God knows what, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I hope you learned your lesson.